Masks not only change the way faces look, they change people too. When people put on new faces, they put on new personalities. When they look different to other people, they feel different. That is one reason that masks have been used for centuries all over the world, in drama, in ritual processions and dances, and for disguise. In this mask-making workshop, artist and teacher Carol Sivin will explain complex mask-making techniques. She will show you how to make imaginative masks as art, for use in performance, or just to change your face. Carol will demonstrate how to make paper headband masks, how to build plaster gauze masks directly on someone's face, and how to cast plaster gauze masks in a plaster mold. She will also show you, step by step, how to make laminated paper masks from a plaster mold, and clay masks from a press mold. Masks do not have to be decorated, but simple art techniques can make them more beautiful and more powerful. Carol will introduce you to many finishing materials and unusual ways to apply them. Now let's take part in this workshop on mask making.
Before we begin the technique of mask making, we're going to look at some of these great masks from around the world. This symmetrical wooden mask is from the Sudan and is meant to be a hunting mask. It's a very beautiful mask, again with the holes on the side for attaching raffia or decorative elements. The big one here is made of paper mache and is the monkey. The monkey is a popular theme in China, and this is a folk art mask made by a local Beijing artist to show the kind of makeup that is used in Chinese opera to represent monkey. This little mask is from Canada, and it's made of straw. It's all plaited and braided. It's supposed to be hung on the doorway for religious ceremonies or during certain times of the year to keep away evil spirits. Korea has some very old masks. It's said that the Korean mask started in about the 3rd century. The modern ones are used in great festivals and ceremonies, and they always have hoods, which is rather unique to the Korean masks. I began making masks about 15 years ago and never thought that I'd still be involved with them. It has opened up a world of mystery, magic, tremendous excitement, and possibilities for my art. It's been astounding to me how many people are interested in masks. And I've met people all over who have shared their ideas, who've shared their masks. Mask making has also given me a way to combine things that I'm interested in, such as painting, collage, rubbing, some of the oriental techniques that I learned in paper making. It really is an endless voyage. And today I hope to share some of the experiences and some of the methods that I've developed over the years as an artist. And I really hope that I'll make you very, very excited about making masks. Today we're going to try a really simple technique that's very effective in making large fantasy masks. It's inexpensive because all you need is a paper bag, a tablespoon of glue, a Q-tip, and a container for the glue. And with all of that, we can make a beautiful mask. I'm going to use Will, and you can put your shower cap on now, Will. Great. Would you mind holding this on your knee? Because we're going to need about 6 hands to do this. So I'm using the torn paper now, and I'll make a very simple headband around his forehead and put just a drop of clear glue right here with the Q-tip. And then he'll have to assist me by holding that particular area while I put another strip of paper. We're making kind of a hat form on top, which can be used later on for a headdress, or it can be taken off if you decide that you don't want it on your mask. We can also use the strips that go down the side as channels for putting other pieces of paper on as we're working. It will become clear in a minute. Okay, that should be dry. I'll put another little drop of glue on the front. Okay, you can hold right there. And then one here. You don't have to hold that. And another one back here. Okay, you can free your other hand and put it back here. You guide the person's fingers there, and this glue dries real fast, so it doesn't, he's always ready for the next strip. This would be hard for the artist to do on his own head because you need to get the top and the sides. So usually in a workshop I have another person help the artist. And when I say the artist, this is going to be his mask. He is going to be the artist. And I'm just assisting him with this technique. Basically, this is the kind of thing, the kind of form that I'm after at this stage. And it's an interweaving of all of these torn paper strips. And you can see closely inside how they all work together. I try to keep it symmetrical as I'm working. One side develops at the same rate as the other side. I'm going to put a few vertical strips down to give me a structure to add on to. And I think I will join this under his chin so that if he wishes to, he can make a helmet mask or a mask that fits under the chin. I've used this technique with very young children and with all ages, actually. And we've gotten some wonderful masks. I might ask you to hold there, yeah, just for a minute. I'm using these papers, the vertical torn papers, as channels now on which to attach other pieces of paper. Sometimes it helps to have two people working on this structure at the same time. It goes very quickly then. Okay, now I'm going to put a vertical down the top of the nose. And it's important to press into the depressions of the face and to work with the elevations and depressions. And this particular area here requires small strips, so you can really get with accuracy that particular place right here. And the wonderful thing about this technique is that you can leave it at any time. Take it off, hang it on the wall, and come back, and it's waiting for you, and it can be put back on. Hold it right here. That's right. Now with him holding it, then I can start working on the form of the nose. Well, this has given him a real good start. I think he can work on this with one of his fellow students, and we'll check a little later on to see what's happened. How does that sound?
Good.
Good. Oh, that is terrific. Maybe we should take it off now so he can really examine it and see what the next step should be. I'm sure he'd like to take a look at it. Now, it's real easy to take off. You just slide it up from the back of the headband and take it off real carefully. And then...
Oh, wow.
It's wonderful. This is such a great start for only 20 minutes work. I think from now on you can work on it yourself in front of a mirror.
Yeah.
And later maybe we can embellish it. And you're really well on your way to a terrific mask. Good. Right now we're going to try the Paris craft and the plaster gauze technique to get a nice firm mold. And from the inside of this mold we can make many, many masks. Or you can use the mold itself as a final mask. You can paint it. It's a wonderful technique because you get a real likeness of the person. It takes about 20 minutes to make a finished mold, and there are a few precautions that I must warn you about. This technique must be used with something like Vaseline or pure petroleum jelly. It is the release agent for getting the mold off the face. And it is important to cover the eyebrows, the lashes, any hairs here that might be exposed, to cover the whole face and under the chin. Kathleen is going to be our model, and please put the shower cap on. Get ready for the process. Okay, now I'll give you the Vaseline. Please put it on carefully.
All over?
Yeah, right, the whole face. We're about ready to start, so I have cut the plaster gauze into varying lengths, and we have warm water here. I think the warm water activates the gauze a little bit better. This is cheesecloth impregnated with plaster, and the process will take us about 20 minutes. So I'm going to begin with a longer strip right now. You pull all of the excess water out, and while you're doing that, the little holes of the cheesecloth get filled in with plaster. And I make sure that the strip of plaster gets pressed down so that it's all filled in with plaster. And I overlap slightly one strip over the bottom of the previous strip. I'm going to keep her eyes open in this one because this is the first time she's had a mold done on her face. And that way she doesn't have her visual sense turned off at the same time by covering the eyes. Don't rush it. It goes quite quickly, but you don't have to hurry. Just work very, very carefully, and one strip over the other, and it'll work out very nicely. I try to follow the shape of the features and make it as symmetrical as possible. I've heard about plaster casts, plaster masks that used to be made on people, and this process is much more comfortable. I'm going to go right over the lips and pull this shape out here to be able to get the articulation between the lips. This is quite important, especially if you want to use the mold as a mask later on. It just gives you the option of having a realistic mold. And it also looks very beautiful. Use long strips and wider strips for bigger areas of the face. For instance, here, down here, across the chin, you can use longer strips. And again, close to the eyes or wherever you want detail, you use the smaller strips. Just follow the shape right through, the shape of the plaster, right through. If it gets a little thick, it doesn't matter, because this side of the mask is not going to be the most important. The side that is against the face has all of the detail we may be using later on for other molds, casts from inside the mold. Always be sure the nostrils are left open. And some people feel that their sense of breathing, their sense of smell and everything is cut off. So just make sure that the nostrils are well exposed. And keep checking with the model to see if she's doing okay. Feeling all right? Good. Now I like to make the edge of the mold stronger, because that's where it will be taken off and it gets a little more activity. It's the same principle as using the paper strips, small strips for small areas. So we're just about ready to take it off, but it's going to sit on her face for a minute and just dry. Be about 3 more minutes. Okay, just pull now from the bottom. That's the way. Look at all the details here, the eyebrows, and down here, and that line between the lips. You see how wonderful that is? You're going to be very pleased with this when we start working with it. Beautiful. Now you have some plaster that's attached right here on the lid. Just go to the restroom, take a wet paper towel, and pull the plaster away from your eyes. Don't let any get in. Get it here too. And this area here. But just get it away right now. Students can also use these little commercial molds from art supply companies. They can cover them with the plaster gauze, the same way we did on the face. And you can also use them, these little molds, as supports for masks that are in progress. You don't need to put Vaseline on them. The plaster will come up from the mold when you're finished. This is a good technique for someone who's reluctant to have the plaster put on his or her face. Someone might have an allergy, and it's a handy little thing from time to time. You don't have to worry about the plaster getting in someone's eye. So you just proceed the same way we did on Kathleen's face. And you'll get something that looks like a mannequin head. One other precaution that I thought about: do not throw the plaster down the sink, because it can cause serious plumbing problems. What I usually do with the remnants of plaster is to let it settle to the bottom of the bowl and just wipe it out with a paper towel or throw it out in the trash. It's coming along quite well. You just go with horizontal and vertical strips to make it strong, and then it'll dry and you take it off. The next step in this process is strengthening the mold. Now, it's important to strengthen the mold for any further work that we do, because we're going to work on the inside, and we have all the detail and the realism and the personality of the sitter captured on the inside. And what we're going to do is cast from the inside with some very simple techniques. Okay, so first, let's do the strengthening. And again, we use the plaster gauze, just like we did before, but I usually put a little clear white glue, either Sobo or Elmer's, and I rub it into this plaster strip once it's wet. So we wet it in the same way as we did with the model. And then just rub a little of this in. Just gives it a lot more strength. And put it over the surface of this mold. So always strengthen on the outside with the plaster gauze strengthened with the clear glue. And I think just to be certain that it's real strong, go over the whole outside, leaving any of the areas open. Cover this back with the pencil lines. This way, when we place something else to make a cast inside, we're going to see where we haven't covered. And to save time, I'm just going to waterproof where I have the pencil lines. You will waterproof this whole back side. But I will just show you how to apply the varnish. I use gloss medium. It's a medium for the plastic or acrylic paint, and it's also a waterproofing agent. And I put it on full strength with a brush. This is obtainable in any art store, and it's called gloss medium. It adds a shine to paint when you use it later on, but it also waterproofs. So you go over this whole area that has the pencil lines. Now this is rather important for the next 3 techniques that I'm going to show you. So be sure you really strengthen the mold. Okay? So as I said before, you put pencil lines on the whole back of the mask, then you waterproof it, and in the front you put the strengthened plaster gauze over all of the areas that are already covered with plaster. Be sure to wash this brush out with clean water, or it'll dry in the brush and you won't be able to use the brush again. This is a mold that has been prepared with the pencil lines. It has already been covered with the varnish, and it's been strengthened on the front. So you see, it looks a little stronger than the one we did of Kathleen. Now, the next step on this is to put some Vaseline. We need it to release the plaster copy that I'm making of the inside of this mold. We are casting now with plaster gauze strips. I'm going to do 3 techniques: plaster gauze strips, paper, and clay. And with these 3 techniques, you will have a lot that you can do. You can make many, many copies of this wonderful face, as long as the mold is strong enough. Okay, so you already remember how we have done the plaster gauze strips, and I'm just kind of placing them right inside the mold where the Vaseline is. And you see, you can tell where this plaster gauze is going because you see the color of the underneath layer. This goes very, very quickly. It's not like doing it on the real person's face because you don't have to be as worried about getting plaster in the person's eyes. So I'll just do a few of these to show you the technique, and then I'll pick up another one that's just been finished from inside this mold. We'll let this dry, and that will again take about 20 minutes, and then I'll show you how to pull it out. So you just use small pieces of gauze in small areas and larger pieces, larger strips where you have a lot of surface to cover. Once you finish the first layer in here, put another one along the edge, covering the first layer, because you want a little extra strength because you're putting a lot of wear and tear on this. Well, I'll show you how to take this dried plaster cast out of the original mold. You have to grab it by the edges, and you see how it gives sometimes. You need to have a nice strong layer around the outside. And you have to kind of pull it like this and grab it around the edges. And then it comes free. And we get this kind of thing. Notice how smooth this is. It's just wonderful. And we have all of these details of this person's face. So I'm using the same mold, and I'm just going to put a few paper strips inside to give you an idea of how this paper cast is going to look. And again, I use the Q-tip so I don't get too much glue. Place craft paper, handmade paper, anything you'd like to use in there. And you use paper to paper. The glue does not touch the back of the mold. It will begin to stick in there a little better. You don't need to put Vaseline on the mold for this technique because there's nothing there to resist. The paper will come out very easily. Just a little bit of glue. And again, long strips for long areas, little short strips for areas where you need to really get the detail, such as in here. If this starts pulling out too much, you can just tack it to the front of the mold with just a little bit of glue. It'll come off later. Just like that. So you go over the whole surface, leaving the openings just like we did before. And since this is paper, you can cut away anything that you don't want. I usually make 2 layers of this craft paper before I pull it out. So this would be considered a press mold because I've pressed the paper into the mold. And for this particular one that will be releasing from the mold, I've used Japanese mulberry paper and I applied it strip by strip. And it's very flexible, so it comes out fairly easily. So at this point, it would be possible to use it as a finished mask. My masks are usually built up to about 8 to 10 layers of this paper or any other material that I use. I'm going to be making a pressed clay mask out of this little mold. It's kind of a sweet little mold because it's of a 7-year-old boy. And I made a mask for him for a performance in New York. So it's all been prepared with the strengthening process, the pencil marks, the varnish, and we're going to start with some self-hardening clay now. The clay looks like this when it comes out of the box. It does not have to be put into a kiln or into an oven. It just hardens in the air. And I will press small strips of clay into the inside of this mold. Now again, you have to make sure that the Vaseline is on here so that it releases the clay from the mold. And you can see very nicely the progress of your work. You just keep pressing it into all of the little depressions of the inside of this mold. Make sure that one piece adheres to the previous one. And you can smooth it, press it. It manipulates very, very nicely. And if it feels a little hard, just put a little water on your finger. Small strips for small areas, just as I've said, for a lot of these techniques. And follow the outline of the mold underneath. In other words, follow the curve of the eye. Follow the edge of the mask. Any texture, press into it. A light pressure is all that is needed. And you want to finish it all at once. It is important not to let the clay go through the openings to the front of the mold because this clay will harden and grab onto the front of the mold, and it may crack the little clay mask when you want to remove it. In this case, I happen to be using a toothpick, and I trim that off. So this gives you an idea of what it looks like. I'll put this aside and show you one that has just been done. This is the little clay mask that came out of that mold of the little boy, and it's almost ready now for embellishing, and I'll probably paint it with Liquitex paint, with the acrylic paint, and I've left little holes. I've pierced holes while it was still in the mold. I used my toothpick, and this gives me the option of adding little decorative pieces. This is a little porcelain mask that I did about 5 years ago, a very dear friend of mine. And it was made by pressing clay inside the mold. And this is a mask that was fired because it's porcelain clay. I've used the clay mask as part of a seasonal project of mine. This is spring, and it's a clay mask and surrounded by clay and paper leaves. Now, I'm with Barbara Smith from Aspen High School.
Yes.
And I love the work that your students have done using the mask. Could you tell us a little bit about the assignments that you've done with them?
Well, the assignments change from class to class, and the masks that you will be viewing are from 2 different classes, but they all deal with design problems. When I have the students do these, I try to have them incorporate certain parts of earlier assignments. In particular, in this one right here, the whole assignment ended up being around Halloween, but you don't want to do things with high school kids about Halloween, at Halloween, other than as a basis. So we took an original paper sculpture assignment, and she developed this domino mask with build-up using some ideas from an earlier original assignment, and elaborated on the processes and techniques to come up with this as a final picture, wherein a mask, the objective was for a mask to become more than a mask and maybe to become some sort of visual object where you had to look at it a little while before you were sure what it was.
How about this one?
This one is from the same class, done by a different student. This girl is more comedic in terms of her approach. The leaves that are on to make this creature are petals off a flower. This again is a domino mask.
Tell us about this one here. This is wonderful.
What they did is they used a pressed mold mache mask, and then the assignment included that they could split it. They had to develop it so that it was a hanging wall piece. Somehow it had to be framed, and it had to do some sort of interpretation of a human attitude, a human feeling, and they have a tendency to reach more at any age when I do this type of an assignment.
Right. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Wonderful work.
Thank you.
I'm just bending a coat hanger now, and we have the armature for a very nice mask, a ceremonial mask, something that we can use wire attached to this. So I'll show you one that I've just been working on and some of the materials that I've used. A lot of students have really liked working with wire, and they're surprised that they like working with wire. It becomes almost like drawing with the wire when you attach it to the coat hanger. You get really interested in the attaching and the way it starts ballooning out, the way you can form it and bring it out from a 2-dimensional object into a real 3-dimensional, beautiful thing. For this, I have used copper wire. I've used 24 gauge, which is very malleable. It bends very, very nicely. And this is 18 gauge, which is a little harder to bend, but it's not bad at all. The higher the gauge, the finer the wire. You can use kind of electrical wire, florist wire, any spare wire that you happen to have around. Now, a lot of people combine this wire technique with the paper strips. Easy to attach, especially with this flexible fine wire. You don't even need the wire cutters. Just use a pair of scissors. Now with this wire I can still loop it around. So you can just loop this around and make channels from one shape to the other, so you can really pick up the distance between this wire and this, and you have a whole surface here to play with. I think you'll really enjoy working with wire. I find it one of the most intriguing techniques. So see what you can do with this. I like this new technique because you can be really noisy and casual and make big, simple masks, powerful masks. Now you start with a piece of newspaper, or a couple of pieces actually, and crumple it into a nice big shape. And then you add junk or big shapes like horns or twisted paper. I used a tape, and here I just pressed on a piece of newspaper and used this filament tape and taped it onto my crumpled paper shape. When you use this filament tape, it's waterproof, so it'll turn out to be really durable in the long run. And you can make lots of masks with this particular armature. And I just attached that and pressed it to the armature and added a few more shapes. Now I wanted a simple, monumental animal. So basically it's just twist, crumple, tape, and think really large. You know, you could make something like this. Children really love this technique. It's great for carnival masks. This is another one that I started. Just this kind of horizontal shape joined with another one in these two large eyes. Over this, I again use those wonderful strips of craft paper with the little capillaries, little torn paper, and I press them to the shape. I'll put some more on in a minute so you'll see. I join one strip to the other. So I'm using that torn paper and just attaching it to this armature that I have here. I'm using large strips. I'm keeping it very casual and fun. It's not like an uptight project. And I will just proceed until this armature is covered. And I'll show you what you get. Okay, now you have to pretend that this is all covered with the torn paper. And I'm just taking that off. And this is what my mask looks like now after about 3 layers of the craft paper. So this is 3 layers of paper pressed into that simple armature. And you can see the tape roll is still here. I didn't cover it. I used it as my form. And the ears are open. I didn't go all the way around to the back. And I'll lift this off and show you what I have. This is my favorite technique right now. And inside, I have strengthened it with the plaster gauze and some paper, and it's very strong. My next step will be to paint it. We're going to start embellishing things. I'm going to show you some techniques. Everyone who makes a mask has a way of decorating it. This is a little mask that I had started. I'm not going to finish it now, but you might see some possibilities here. We have pipe cleaners, a pipe cleaner here wound around, and I might not even put it on the other half. These are the little paper fasteners and some decorations that I picked up in a sewing store. And we have these little metallic circles. Here's some craft wire that is always wonderful for accenting the mask. Eggshells. Eggshells are great. You crumple them up, glue them on, and you can paint them. The way you glue them on is to just paint Elmer's glue over the surface of the mask and drop these, sprinkle them on. And these wonderful little decoration bits that I found in a sewing store. Will is painting his mask that we saw him make earlier, and it's coming quite well. He's using tempera paint, and I had him mix a little bit of this acrylic gloss medium. This will waterproof the mask, and it will also keep the paint from crackling off. Now you can use buttons, macaroni. If you get a bunch of children in here, you'll see the possibilities. This macaroni could be sprayed different colors. We saw some masks with gold paint on them. Aluminum foil is fantastic. Mirrors, feathers, toothpicks, tape. We have just scratched the surface with the hundreds of ways we can decorate masks. Just use your imaginations and you'll create something absolutely unique and wonderful.